Let us suppose that there is no such thing as an objective reality, and that nothing truly exists outside of our impressions and social agreements. There are no forces at work in this world or universe that operate independently of what we believe. Outside of our personal impression or belief that such and such happens, no one is actually born or dies, and nothing is created or destroyed. We imagine the universe to be a few thousand or billions of years old, and we concocted many a lively tale to explain why we are here. We can make intuitive, unfounded statements about anything and everything. We can dispense with inquiry altogether and invent billions upon billions of other thinking sentients on other planets we brought into being just by thinking about them. Creatures of our own making that have come and gone to muse or wonder at the stars we flung into the space we manifested and ponder the miraculous molecule that we conceived. In a subjective reality, we do not have to ask how we got here, or wonder at our conventions for departure and death. All projections, all constructs in a massive simulation, the ultimate virtual reality. The posit that reality is subjective is based on the concept that the real is a set of arbitrary agreements. For example, according to the theory, the applications of the physical laws that allow us to build skyscrapers, fly planes, and fry eggs are actually social constructs. The further assumption is that all sentient life on the planet, perhaps in the universe, is participating in this collective agreement. There would be room for alternative agreements about the way things work or don't work if perhaps enough people or creatures got together and agreed on another plan. This notion renders any further inquiry suspect. Purely subjective data or historical record is useless, because if there is no such thing as objective reality, the way we look for and at the data will design the results and only affirm our dominant collective social agreements. Assuming it is true beyond the shadow of a doubt that reality is subjective, we will have somehow found a way to determine the objective criteria that proves that this is true. Now we are faced with an intrinsic but dangerous contradiction. If it is true that reality is in the eye of the beholder, then the belief that there is such a thing as objective reality is as valid as any other perception. In fact, the notion that reality is a construct must necessarily allow for all subjective notions of the nature of the universe, the laws of physics, biology, time, and so on. Through this emerging dichotomy, we've set the stage for a war of perceptions, a struggle for the dominance of some ideas over others. To subscribe to a majority view of reality is to underwrite the destruction of alternative realities. In an entirely subjective universe, where rather than the truth, the real is a power symbol that represents dominant social constructions, the struggle to establish a new hegemony is fought on the basis of majority opinion, rather than truth. And of course, as a social construct to begin with, the concept of majority versus minority itself must be fought over. Indeed, all notions of value become linguistic or political battlefields, and all areas of life subject to hegemonic regulation, and every lifestyle is potentially contentious. If reality is subjective, there is the theoretical possibility that a group of people might, through the weight of numbers, impose a reality on those in a minority, dismantling or destroying their arbitrarily determined right to their own reality construct. But if every variation of reality is voluntary, it is also impossible to make any objective moral case for the preservation or destruction of one reality over another. We could willfully decide that the dominant social construct is wrong, but this would be as arbitrary as to insist that it is right, especially when the objective criteria for right or wrong have been defined by the selfsame dominant social paradigm. Indeed, once we have dismantled all criteria, all coherency, all logic, once we have refused all sources of data gathering as self-interested or culture-specific, we cannot make an unbiased argument for or against anything, not even the best way to solve an engineering problem, or what is unhealthy to eat. The very notion of minority rights must be seen as spurious, as each person might and will likely have their own reality, and therefore all groupings represent a menace to individual perceptions. More importantly, the statement annihilates itself. If there is no objective reality, then there is no objective proof for the posit. Nothing we can say in defense of the notion can be taken as anything other than subjective conjecture. No argument made on that basis will ever have more status than an opinion. Those who ascribe to this point of view deprive both themselves and those who disagree of any proof. The argument for and against an objective reality quickly exhausts itself. When the basis of the argument is that nothing can be verified, there is literally no point in arguing subjective views of it. Also, there is no plausible argument for affirming the objective effects of an entirely subjective premise, protocol, or perception. The case could be made for objective reality on the basis of injury or illness. Even if we say that the reason we get sick is because of a manifest negative mental or emotional state, we are implying that there are objectively correct or incorrect ways of behaving, as one way will empirically result in relative health and another in relative illness. We might also allow that illness and health themselves are somewhat objective measures for good or poor judgment, or disadvantageous or favorable conditions. In my youth, I accepted certain socially reinforced interpretations of reality as truth under pressure, that refuted certain concepts of my body in lieu of others. I think these memes contributed to the risks that eventually resulted in many of my injuries. Having benefited enormously from scientific inquest on related issues, I personally allow myself the luxury of the potentially subjective conviction that there is an objective reality, a reality that can be interpreted correctly or incorrectly, a testable objective reality. After assisting many other people to heal from like injuries, it seems clear that the existence of an objective wealth of knowledge on how things actually work, regardless of our opinions, allows methods to be developed that can help us to avoid injury and other kinds of catastrophe. My work of the last 21 years, the Axis Syllabus, has based itself on comparative research and protocol development for training and preparing the human body for both basic and athletic activity. Much of the effort has been looking at injury statistics, pathology reports, staying up to date with the discoveries in human anatomy, biomechanics, and medicine, and studying basic Newtonian physics. My research strongly suggests that many current and traditional notions about how the human body works are not only false or misleading, but dangerous and practically guaranteed to cause injury or disease if dutifully applied. The evidence is overwhelming, but one aspect of the human body plan that can very well be universal provides us with the strongest impetus for a reworking of most approaches. Triangulation. The shapes of the various substructures that compose the human body form a collage of curved and twisted triangles. This observation, which is consistent with general observations of practically all life on this planet, places any training or physiotherapy system that insists on monoplaying motions under suspicion as a source of injury. If we can trust the data-gathering efforts of the thousands of scientists, training-related injuries are at epidemic levels. But if objective reality doesn't exist, it will not matter if we changed our behavior, because there are no objective results to a change in behavior in a subjective universe. Behavior itself is only imagined projection. Physical symptoms are the result of emotions, and emotional states are therefore voluntary. Perceived environmental destruction, oppression, slavery, injustice, these are our own constructs, as well as the potentially resulting anger, cynicism, or bitterness. In a subjective reality, we don't have to change what we do, only how we think about things.